wife to Ryan. As he lay dying, I held back my tears and kept calling him by name. He used the last of his strength to open his eyes and gave me a smile full of deep affection. Then he said, "Emily, in the next life, you have to wait for me." I froze. Emily was my cousin's name. My name is Natalie. I naively thought he was just confused. But at the funeral, Emily showed up with a will Ryan had secretly prepared and took away every bit of property under his name. She threw a stack of love letters, ones Ryan had written to her for over half a century, right in my face and sneered, "Natalie, the one your man loved most was me." After the funeral, I wandered home in a daze, only to be hit and dragged under a speeding truck. When I opened my eyes again, I had gone back in time, back to the day of the commune's youth celebration. This time, I ignored Ryan's icy stare and handed the white steamed bun in my hand to one of the outcasts nearby. The sunlight stung my eyes, and the bright red banners hanging in the courtyard were just as I remembered them. I had been reborn, back in the commune, on the very day of the celebration. A young Ryan stood in front of me. Around him, several male volunteers jeered. "Hey Ryan, your little shadow's here." "Hey Natalie's sister, look at me, I'm not worse than your precious Ryan." Ryan said nothing. He just cast a brief, sharp glance at me, a look of disdain I had never noticed in my past life. In that life, I had chased after Ryan with everything I had. He was handsome, came from a good family, and treated everyone with courtesy. I, on the other hand, was brash and carefree, used to getting my way as the village party secretary's daughter. I followed him around every day. Everyone in the village said he was destined for greatness, a golden phoenix flying out of our tiny place. He did indeed become wildly successful, but the only thing he left me was a betrayal that tore through my soul. At that moment, Ryan gave me the same aloof and arrogant smile he always had in my past life. But I no longer felt the flutter of affection I once did. Instead, I turned to look at the young man sitting in the farthest corner, Zach. He was thin, quiet, and seemed indifferent to everything around him. I'd heard he'd been sent down from the provincial capital after getting into trouble. Because of that, he was completely isolated. In my previous life, I never paid him much attention, just vaguely remembered that he wasn't a bad guy, just silent and withdrawn. Before the volunteers returned to the city, he was taken away by the county officials. After that, no one heard from him again. I took a deep breath and walked over to place the warm steamed bun, meant for Ryan, into Zach's chipped bowl. The stares around me turned sharp and disapproving, but I just whispered, "Eat." Zach froze, slowly looked up at me, and after a long pause, forced out a stiff "thanks." Suddenly, a large hand gripped my wrist. I turned to see Ryan's cold face. He lowered his voice, his tone tinged with restrained anger. "Natalie, what game are you playing now?" "I'm giving someone a bun. What else do you think I'm doing?" I shot back. He had never seen me act this coldly before. His tone grew harsher. "If you're giving it of your own will, I won't say anything. But Natalie, do you even know what you're doing?" He curled his lips into a smug smile, eyes full of certainty that I was still in love with him, confident in the worship I used to give him. I scoffed. "Of course I know what I'm doing. The real question is, do you even know what you want?" His smile froze. Just then, Emily came running over, grabbing his sleeve and speaking softly. "Ryan, don't be mad. My cousin just has a childish temper. Don't take it to heart." Ryan turned to her and put on that same gentlemanly smile he used to charm everyone. "Let's go eat," he said. "She's not worth getting upset over." He thought that by ignoring me, I'd go crawling back to him like before, desperately trying to win him over. But as I watched the two of them act in perfect harmony, all the humiliation and pain from my past life came rushing back. I bit back my tears and walked away without looking back. When I got home, my father was already waiting in the main hall, holding his pipe. "I heard you gave that white steamed bun to that troublemaker," he said. I stayed silent. He slammed the table and shouted, "Ryan is the outstanding youth volunteer here, and you go and show kindness in public to someone with political problems? Are you trying to make the whole village a laughingstock?" I bit my lip and pushed back. "Zach works harder than anyone else. Everyone can see it." My father frowned even more deeply. "If you're going to marry someone, it should be Ryan. Do you even know what kind of background that city boy Zach comes from? His family are just laborers." The moment he said the words "marry Ryan," flashes of my previous life filled my mind. Moments of false happiness. Every year on my birthday, Ryan would give me a bouquet of lilies. I thought lilies were his favorite flower, so I never mentioned that I was allergic to them. He never noticed either. But just earlier at the celebration, when Emily showed up in a white dress and recited a short story titled Lilies, I finally remembered. Lilies were her favorite, not mine. "Dad, I'm not marrying Ryan," I snapped, storming off to my room. The next morning when we left for work in the fields, I noticed Zach was there too. I hadn't even realized in my past life that he was part of the same work team as me. During the labor, Emily clung to Ryan the entire time, her flattery practically glowing. I deliberately stayed far away from the two of them, not wanting to see it. During a break, I found a spot and sat down to eat my dry rations. Just as I turned around, I saw Ryan walking quickly toward me, holding a metal lunchbox. I didn't want to deal with him, but he caught up anyway. "I heard you skipped breakfast. I brought you some leftover sweet potato porridge from the commune cafeteria," he said, offering it to me. His expression looked caring, but behind it was a sense of superiority, like he was bestowing pity from above. "No thanks, I'm not hungry," I replied, not reaching for it. His brow twitched, almost imperceptibly, but he kept up the facade of concern. "Are you still mad about what I said yesterday? I was only thinking of your best interest. If people see you being so kind to a social outcast, it could start rumors. It's not good for your reputation." Then, as if that weren't enough, he added, "Didn't you say you liked me? Why bother wasting your time on someone like Zach?" His arrogant tone nearly made me laugh. "I liked you?" I said coldly. "Ryan, don't flatter yourself. Who I choose to help is my business. It has nothing to do with you." He clearly hadn't expected such a sharp rejection. His face stiffened, but he still tried to hold his pride. "Natalie, don't forget, your dad still hopes we'll get married. If you really get yourself tangled up with a guy like that, even if you come crawling back to me later, I won't take you." I let out a cold laugh, glanced over at Zach sitting nearby, and handed him my steamed bun. Someone nearby saw and mocked him loudly. "You just take whatever she gives you? Don't you have any shame?" I shot that person a glare. "I can give my food to whoever I want. What business is it of yours?" Zach looked up at me, his face flushing bright red. I gave him a subtle look. He immediately understood. I was doing it to embarrass Ryan. With a knowing grin, he took a big bite. I turned back to face Ryan with a challenging look. He was furious, stuffing the lunchbox back into his bag before stomping off. Not far away, Emily glanced around nervously before throwing down her hoe and secretly following after him. I gave a bitter smile. So they'd been sneaking around this whole time, and I'd been the fool, completely in the dark. After work, near the ruined temple at the edge of the village, I ran into Ryan and Emily. I had only come this way on a hunch, not expecting to actually find them. They were getting intimate. I crept closer to the wall, moving quietly. In the dim light, I saw their two silhouettes pressed close together. "You're here early. Aren't you afraid Natalie might catch us?" Ryan said. "We haven't completely dealt with her yet," Emily whispered with a laugh. "Didn't you say she's head over heels for you? Just toss her a few sweet lies, she won't go anywhere." He had one hand pressed against the wall, the other wrapped around Ryan's neck. Her body tilted slightly back under his weight, breath short and shallow, chest heaving. "Besides," Emily whispered, "I snuck out without telling anyone. Shouldn't you be happy?" "Happy? Of course I'm happy," Ryan muttered, his voice low and raspy. Emily's blouse had slipped down past her collarbone, revealing a swath of pale, bare skin. Ryan made no attempt to hide his actions as he leaned into her neck and kissed along the hollow of her throat. "I have to hurry and get the marriage certificate done," he said, voice rough. "You know how it is. Only by marrying Natalie can her father help me get the permit to return to the city." My heart clenched like it had been pierced with needles. So, to Ryan, I was nothing more than a stepping stone. Emily pouted playfully. "What about me then? If you marry her, what happens to me? What are you afraid of?" Ryan answered. "Don't you already know how I feel? Once everything's settled, I'll find a way to get you transferred back to the city. We'll be together sooner or later." "Humph. Let's see how you plan to make it up to me then," she teased. Ryan gave a low chuckle and bent down, planting a deep kiss on her neck. making her gasp. Soon, the sounds of moaning and heavy breathing echoed from the shadows. Shame, fury, and a deep, biting chill surged in my chest. In my past life, after Ryan returned to the city, he left me behind in the village because I didn't have a city household registration. It wasn't until I worked my way into college that I finally reunited with him. Looking back now, it was probably my education and stable job that made him willing to stay with me. I clenched my fists quietly. In this life, I would never fall into the same trap again. Back then, Ryan and I got married because of an accident. I'd been out with a group of volunteers when I slipped and fell into a cave in the mountains. Ryan had risked everything to find me and carry me out. Word spread quickly through the village. Everyone praised him for risking his life to save mine. My father was thrilled and immediately arranged for our engagement. But I'd made up my mind. This time, that accident would not happen again. And I would never marry Ryan. But fate has its patterns. The next day, the commune assigned me and a few other volunteers to go into the mountains to cut grass and gather firewood. Sure enough, Ryan was assigned too. My mind buzzed as I realized we were headed down the exact same mountain trail as before. It was barely dawn when we set out. As soon as Ryan saw me, he put on a caring act. "Natalie, did you bring food and water? The mountain trail is dangerous. Don't try to push yourself too hard." I ignored him and looked ahead to where Zach was walking quietly. "Zach? Wait up!" I called out. In my past life, Zach had also been part of this mountain trip, but I had barely noticed him. Now I wasn't letting that happen again. Ryan's footsteps faltered slightly. His eyes locked onto the space between me and Zach, his lips pressed into a tight line. I didn't even look at him. I picked up my pace and caught up to Zach. When we reached the base of the mountain, the team started dividing up. Last time, I had been paired with Ryan, which gave him the chance to play the hero. This time, I made a point to request to go with 2 seasoned workers from another production team. They had years of experience and were less likely to get into trouble. Ryan had no choice but to go with someone else, visibly annoyed. I let out a breath of relief. By the afternoon, the weather suddenly changed. The wind picked up, and one of the older men pointed to a nearby slope. "There's more tailgrass up ahead. Let's finish up and head back early." We climbed over a patch of loose rocks. I was just about to kneel down and start cutting when my foot slipped. I almost tumbled off the ledge. This part of the mountain was even more treacherous than I remembered. Cold sweat formed on my forehead. The 2 older workers sensed something was wrong and quickly called for me to retreat. But we hadn't made it far when my foot hit a loose spot. I fell. I plummeted into a deep pit, slicing open my left leg badly and fracturing the bone. Even the slightest movement sent waves of unbearable pain through my body. I was surrounded by wild, overgrown grass. The jagged rocks blocked my view, but I could vaguely hear someone calling my name from above. The voice was distant, muddled in the wind rolling off the mountains, impossible to make out clearly. I fought to stay conscious, knowing that in my previous life, I had blacked out from the pain in this exact moment. By the time I came to, Ryan had already carried me back home and taken all the credit. This time, I was determined to stay awake. I bit through my lip, forcing myself to stay alert. I tried dragging my injured leg, but it was no use. Time crawled by, second after second, the cold and the searing pain blending into a haze that blurred my thoughts. I don't know how much time passed before I heard someone shouting my name nearby. I summoned every ounce of strength I had to whisper, "Help me." Footsteps drew near and the bushes rustled as someone pushed through. When I saw who it was, I froze. It wasn't Ryan. It was Zach. And with that final ounce of relief, I could hold on no longer. My eyes closed, and I sank into unconsciousness. I was asleep for 2 full days. When I finally opened my eyes again, my father's worried face was the first thing I saw. Ryan came in right after, just like in my past life, carrying a basket of eggs and a few rare supplements. "Natalie, how's your leg?" "I got some special things from the commune to help you recover," he said warmly. My dad looked pleased by his attentiveness. "Natalie, you really owe it to Ryan this time. If it weren't for him..." He was doing exactly what he'd done before, taking credit for saving me. But I remembered clearly how. As Zach carried me out, my head had rested on his broad back. There was something strangely familiar about that sensation, even though I had never been close to him in my previous life. Then the realization struck me like a lightning bolt. Zach had been the one who saved me before, too. After all, when Ryan came to pick me up for the wedding in our past life, he could barely carry me a few steps. How could he have possibly carried me down the mountain on his own? I looked at him coldly and stayed silent. My father, still smiling, said, "I've already reported it to the commune. We'll hold the wedding in a few days." What? I stared at him in disbelief. In the past, I had to beg Ryan multiple times before he reluctantly agreed to marry me. Now it seemed like my recent indifference had pushed him to act first, eager to secure his return to the city. "You've always liked Ryan," my father said cheerfully, "and Ryan's been nothing but good to you. What better time than now to finalize things?" I kept my face cold. "Dad, I'm not marrying Ryan." He frowned. "What are you talking about? You two were out there all night alone. Who else could you possibly marry? The village gossip alone would drown you." I curled my lips into a half smile and turned to Ryan. "Ryan, were you really the one who saved me that day?" The room fell completely silent. For a moment, Ryan looked surprised, but he quickly composed himself. "Natalie, what's gotten into you? Everyone saw me carry you back to the village." I let out a dry laugh. "Sure, you carried me back, but the one who actually rescued me from danger in the mountains, that wasn't you." My father quickly stepped in, trying to smooth things over. "Natalie, maybe the fall scrambled your memory a bit." Ryan's face turned pale, but he kept his composure. "Natalie, you can't just say things like that. If you've got no proof, don't accuse people just because you're upset. I was a little late." I scoffed and reached under my pillow, pulling out a torn strip of cloth, part of Zach's shirt that he'd used to wrap my injured leg. It was still stained with my blood and crushed herbs. I held it up. This was used to bind my wound. The one who saved me also did this." Then I turned to the doorway. I had already noticed Zach standing outside, hesitant to enter with so many people inside. He was still wearing the same tattered shirt from that day, the bottom edge visibly ripped. I smiled gently. "Zach, come in and tell them. You were the one who stayed with me that night." Zach flushed deep red, but stepped forward resolutely. Everyone turned to look at his ragged clothes. The truth was as plain as day. Ryan's face stiffened in embarrassment, his expression twisted with frustration as he glared at me. "I never said I was the one who saved you," he snapped. "Zach and I carried you back together. That's a fact. Natalie, why are you targeting me like this? I've always treated you with sincerity, and now you're trying to humiliate me. What is this about?" His shameless attempt to twist the truth made me laugh in disbelief. I didn't bother arguing. Instead, I looked straight at Zach. "Zach," I said clearly, "will you marry me?" Ryan's face turned ashen, like he'd been struck by lightning. He looked like he couldn't believe what he'd just heard. "Natalie, what are you saying? He's a backward element. You'll have no future with someone like him." My father's face changed drastically. Furious, he rushed toward me as if to strike me. I stared him down and replied sharply, "Weren't you the one who said a man and a woman spending the night alone would cause rumors? So who else am I supposed to marry?" That shut him up instantly. He stammered, caught off guard. I knew if I didn't force his hand now, he'd never give up trying to push me into marrying Ryan. Ryan, pale with panic, tried to keep up his argument. "Natalie, your father just wants what's best for you. This is the new society. We should move past those outdated views. I'm willing to marry you. I don't care about any of that." I thought to myself, even if you're willing, I'm not. I looked up at Zach. The tips of his ears were beet red, but his eyes were clear and steady. "Natalie," he said quietly, "do you really want to be with me?" I nodded solemnly. A soft smile bloomed on his face. "All right." It was the first time I realized how handsome Zach truly was. My father was so enraged he fell ill, but in the end, he still agreed to the marriage. Villagers gossiped endlessly, claiming I'd lost my mind, passing up Ryan and choosing someone labeled a social outcast. But I didn't care. I threw myself into the wedding preparations. I knew the political winds were about to shift. For both Zach and me, it would bring new opportunities. Ryan, seeing he had nothing left to gain from me, began working other angles to get back to the city. Eventually, he found another way. He submitted proof that a close relative was critically ill and requested emergency leave to return home. Playing the part of a filial grandson, he managed to win the leadership's sympathy and actually secured a spot to return to the city. Our wedding was scheduled for late spring, just before the start of summer. On the day of the ceremony, Ryan returned from the city. It had rained heavily the night before, and the ground outside was scattered with fallen wildflowers. He stood under a tree, wearing a wrinkled old suit, watching me silently. "Natalie," he said, "if you come back with me now, I'll take you to the city. I'll handle all the paperwork, your registration, a job, everything." There was a strange emptiness in his voice, a vague sense of loss hanging in his expression. "I don't know why," he continued, "but when I think about you marrying someone else, it makes me feel hollow inside." I knew he didn't really love me. He just couldn't accept the idea of losing something he assumed would always be his, like a child standing outside a toy store, watching someone else buy a toy he never even played with, but suddenly feels like he's lost everything. I looked up at him and said calmly, "Ryan, the wedding party will be here soon. Please respect yourself." His face went stiff. "You'll regret this one day." I already walked the road of regret in my past life, I thought. This time, it's your turn. I let out a light scoff. "Ryan, I know all about you and Emily, so save your fake sincerity. You make me sick." Ryan turned ghostly pale at my words. I didn't bother looking at him again. I turned and closed the door behind me. Zach arrived on a borrowed bicycle to pick me up, accompanied by a few of his closest relatives. He wore a short-sleeved, polyester suit, probably the best clothes he could find. They weren't new, but they fit his tall frame well, his broad shoulders and slim waist giving him that rare build that made any outfit look good. With one gentle lift, he picked me up and set me on the back of the bike, blushing but smiling as he greeted me. "Natalie? You're so light, just like a child," Zach said with a soft laugh, lifting me onto the bike. That moment made me recall how, in my past life, Ryan would constantly complain I was gaining weight, telling me to diet every other week. It turns out that incompetent men often blame others for their own failures. Zach had rented 2 mud brick rooms for us to live in after the wedding. The furniture inside was all provided with my father's reluctant help. He hadn't looked happy, but in the end, he gave in to me like always. The rooms were packed with people. A few of the other young women helped paste the red, double happiness characters on the curtains. In the courtyard, several Eight Immortals tables were set up, and red paper cutouts were plastered around the smoky stove. This was all the decoration we could afford for the wedding. That night, after the guests left, Zach pulled out a small, palm-sized wooden box and handed it to me. "I wrote to my parents," he said. "They really like you. They're just sorry they couldn't come in person. This is from my mother. She asked me to give it to you as a wedding gift." I opened the box. Inside was a delicate white jade bracelet, its surface smooth and glowing with a gentle luster. The quality was remarkable, clearly a rare and precious piece. Zach's ears turned red as he lowered his voice. "Natalie, my mom said it's not much, but it's all she had that was nice enough. She wanted you to have it. I know marrying me might seem like settling, but one day when I've made something of myself, I'll buy you gold and silver." I shook my head. I don't feel like I'm settling at all. Just this bracelet alone, in the future, would probably be worth a city apartment. Compared to the cold rejection I'd received from Ryan's parents in my last life, Zach's parents were so much kinder. Even though I had a better education and career than Ryan, they looked down on me my entire life, just because I came from the countryside. Even when they were bedridden in their later years, I was the one who cared for them with everything I had, and never once did I get a word of thanks. I reached out and took Zach's hand, tracing the rough, calloused skin of his palm, formed from years of hard labor. The heat of it, coarse and real, moved me far more than any polished gesture ever could. "Zach," I asked quietly, "why did you agree to marry me?" He gave a small, shy smile and didn't answer right away. Instead, he gently took my wrist and carefully slid the jade bracelet onto it. "If I told you I fell in love with you a long time ago, would you believe me?" "I would," I said without hesitation. He had saved me not once but twice, yet never asked for anything in return. The humble room's walls were worn and peeling, The red candle flames danced in the breeze, casting sparks that flickered in his dark eyes like stars. I cupped his face and softly kissed the corner of his mouth. He froze for a moment, then, as if suddenly encouraged, pulled me into his arms. His kiss was tentative and gentle, filled with a long-suppressed yearning. In the candlelight, our shadows pressed together, slowly merging into one. Those first days of marriage were sweet, full of shameless tenderness. Soon, just like in my past life, a county car pulled into the courtyard. A middle-aged official came to summon Zach to the city to assist with an investigation. Zach's brows furrowed deeply. I could see the unease in his heart, so I reached for his sleeve and reassured him softly. "Go on. I'll be waiting for you at home." I smiled, trying my best to let warmth reach my eyes. "When you come back, I'll show you what I'm capable of. I'll take the college entrance exam." The winds of reform were already stirring. I knew big policy changes were coming. In my past life, I became a respected professor of medicine. This time around, the college entrance exam would be a breeze. Zach still looked worried. "Don't worry," I said gently. "While you're gone, I'll stay with my family." I suspected Zach had actually been summoned to resume his old job, but I couldn't say that aloud. All I could do was comfort him the best I could. I stood by the gate, watching the car kick up dust as it drove away, a warm ember glowing in my chest. When he returned, we'd welcome a brighter future together. While Zach was away, I stayed home every day, reading and studying. My father mentioned that Ryan was doing well in the city. Not long after returning, he'd been promoted to department head at the textile factory. "Oh, look at your judgment," my father muttered again, grumbling about my marriage. Zach left without a word. "What if he ruins your future?" He kept comparing the two men, sighing as if I'd thrown my life away. I didn't bother responding. I focused entirely on studying. 2 months after Ryan became department head, he swaggered back to the commune in a government-issued Jeep, with Emily in tow. She wore a crisp white wool coat, the latest city fashion, glowing like a movie star. Right at the entrance of the market, Ryan deliberately blocked my path. "Natalie," he said with feigned concern, "I heard Zach was taken by the disciplinary committee. It's been over a month and still no word. He came just to watch me suffer." I smiled back, calm and composed. "That's right, Director Ryan. You've got connections. Why don't you help me look into it?" Emily let out a mocking laugh, raising her wrist to show off a brand new Shanghai wristwatch. "Cousin," she sneered, "you should just divorce that Zach guy. Let Ryan set you up with one of the divorced factory workers. It's better than wasting your life in this mountain dump. Sure, you'd be a second wife, but you're not bad looking. They wouldn't mind." I had no interest in arguing with her. Looking her in the eye, I replied evenly, "Save your concern. The college entrance exams are about to return. Once the city gates reopen, I'll walk my own path." Ryan clenched his fists. A flicker of frustration crossed his eyes, but he had no words. In the winter of 1977, after 11 long years, the National College Entrance Exam was reinstated. I finished the final question and looked out the exam room window as the last leaf drifted from the poplar tree outside. When the results were posted, the loudspeaker in the commune blared across the village. "Comrade Natalie Lin of Shiling Commune has ranked first in the entire county with a total score of 334. My father clutched his chest, laughing like a child. I wasn't surprised. I had expected this. In this life, I was even more prepared. A few days later, the county's education office summoned me to Lingjin Road to receive my official admission notice. But as I stepped into the main hall, I was immediately blocked by Ryan and Emily, both brimming with hostility. "Top of the county?" Ryan scoffed. "She couldn't possibly have scored that high. She must have cheated." "We have a witness," Emily shouted, waving a crumpled sheet of paper. Another student said she was constantly looking down during the test. Murmurs began spreading among the parents and students nearby. The hall, once buzzing with celebration, quickly cooled with suspicion. Even the admissions director frowned, his expression turning skeptical. Ryan, acting all righteous, said smoothly, "Natalie, we're not saying we don't believe you, but based on your past performance, it's hard for others to accept. If you're really innocent, prove it. Redo the exam right here, in public." Though I was furious inside, I stayed calm. "Why should I prove my innocence? Haven't you heard of the burden of proof lies on the accuser?" You're accusing me? Where's your evidence? You don't seriously expect people to believe a random, unsigned piece of scrap paper, do you? Ryan's face went pale. He stammered but couldn't form a reply. I suspected they never intended to get me disqualified. They just wanted to embarrass me. They didn't expect me to fight back. Emily tried to continue stirring up trouble when suddenly, a clear honk came from outside the hall. A jeep with provincial government plates pulled up smoothly to the steps. Out stepped Secretary Zhao from the county committee, along with the director of the Education Bureau. Then a tall young man in a sharp gray cadre uniform followed them out. It was Zach. The moment he saw me, joy lit up in his eyes. Secretary Zhao clapped him on the shoulder and said loudly, "Comrades, allow me to introduce Cadre Zach Cooper, newly transferred to the Provincial Department of Education. He's here to personally deliver the provincial commendation for top scorers on this year's college entrance exam." Gasps rippled through the hall. Ryan's face turned sheet white. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Secretary Zhao shot him a fierce glare and declared sternly, "Natalie Lynn's examination papers have been fully reviewed. The technical team confirmed their authenticity. There is no evidence of misconduct or cheating whatsoever." Emily collapsed onto the bench behind her with a thud. Ryan's face turned beet red, his neck straining with tension, but he couldn't utter a single word in response. Secretary Zhao publicly reprimanded Ryan and Emily for spreading false rumors and ordered Ryan's unit to suspend him for review. In the jeep, Zach suddenly pulled me onto his lap. I was caught off guard and pushed him away immediately, reminding him there were other people in the car. The driver turned around, struggling to hold back laughter. Trying to sound serious, he said, "Hello, sister-in-law. I'm Zhang Tao, Director Cooper's assistant and his childhood friend. You two do whatever you want back there. I didn't see a thing." Embarrassed, I lightly pounded Zach with my fist twice. He caught my hand and played with it in his palm. "Comrade Natalie Lynn, are you trying to murder your husband?" he teased. "Husband? I don't see one around," I retorted. "Well, now that the top scorer's all famous, I guess this poor man will be discarded soon," he joked. Zach lunged at me to tickle me, but I locked my arms around his neck and kept him still. We both burst into laughter. Outside the window, I caught sight of Ryan standing at the corner of the street, silently watching us. Through the glass, I could see the pride and arrogance on his face crumble completely. Zach had already arranged housing for us in the provincial capital. All that was left was for me to head there for school. Before I left, I heard that due to Ryan's suspension, Emily's transfer request to the city had fallen through as well. Ryan, realizing he was losing ground, began cramming for the summer college entrance exam, hoping to secure a decent future for himself. When the semester ended, I returned to the countryside for summer break. I heard Emily had bombed her exam. Her score didn't even come close to the lowest passing line. She broke down crying to Ryan, demanding to know where her promised city job and household registration were. But Ryan, already irritated by pressure from his parents to get married, had grown tired of her. He replied coldly, "Whose fault is it that you're useless? If you had Natalie's abilities, you wouldn't need to worry about a job or household registration." That single sentence sent Emily into a full-blown breakdown. Ryan's parents had never liked Emily. They were already busy trying to set him up with the girl they actually approved of. Over time, Ryan began to seriously consider ending things with Emily. That's when my aunt and uncle, Emily's parents, stepped in. They were notorious in the commune for being loud and unreasonable. Naturally, they didn't bother with civility when it came to the Ryans. Enraged, they stormed into Ryan's workplace, cursing him in front of everyone. "He played with my daughter and now wants to dump her? Who does he think he is?" they shouted. "You're all witnesses. He's a heartless scumbag. We'll report him to the discipline team for sexual misconduct." With no way out, Ryan was forced to marry Emily. Their marriage was a mess. They fought constantly, small arguments every 3 days, big ones every 5. They became the very definition of a bitter couple. After that, I never heard much about them again. So this was the so-called white moonlight, nothing more than a faded candy wrapper, crumpled by time. Once faced with the grind of daily life, Meals, bills, routine, it turned out to be nothing more than a sticky bit of rice at the bottom of the bowl. It might have looked clean, but once scraped off, it had no taste left. Years later, I graduated from my master's program and joined one of the top-tier hospitals in the country, excelling in both clinical work and research. Meanwhile, Zach resigned from his government post during the early days of China's reform and opening and went into business. Thanks to his vision and courage, he became a successful entrepreneur. That winter, right after we moved into our newly purchased villa, a heavy snow fell. I stood by the window, wrapped in a cashmere blanket, watching the snow pile up outside. Zach had just returned from a business trip in the south, weary from travel. As soon as he stepped through the villa's front door, he took off his coat and loosened his tie, walking straight toward me. Without saying a word, he hugged me from behind, burying his face into the crook of my neck. Like a puppy, he nuzzled me with his nose, still chilled from the outside. I turned my head slightly. "What's with you today? You're being extra clingy." "I missed you," he said simply. He scooped me up and carried me to the couch, his eyes full of emotion too deep to describe. I reached out and touched his face. "Is this your new way of being sweet, Mr. Cooper?" He caught my wandering hand and said, a little wistfully, "I had a dream on the plane." "A good one?" I asked. He shook his head. "The worst dream I've ever had," Zach whispered. "I dreamt I was carrying you on my back through a pitch-black cave, but when I turned around, you had already married Ryan. In the dream, you loved him so much," he continued, voice low, "that you never once spared me a glance. Later, I lived abroad for many years. We both grew old. One day, I missed you so much I flew home immediately, only to be told you died in a car crash. I cried for a long time at your grave." His eyes were faintly red at the corners. It felt so real. Even after waking, my chest still hurt. I threw my arms around him and buried my face in his broad chest. In this life, I was so thankful to have him. He gently stroked my hair. "Wasn't that a stupid dream?" I shook my head against him, too choked up to speak. His laughter was low and warm, resonating through his chest and softly knocking against my ear. Luckily, we didn't miss each other this time. Something cool touched my wrist. I looked down and saw a brilliant glassy jade bracelet, imperial green, the kind that had recently sold at a record-breaking price in Hong Kong. Zach leaned down and whispered in my ear, "I once promised to give you gold and silver, so I'll keep giving for the rest of our lives." The long hallway of the provincial hospital smelled faintly of disinfectant. I walked quickly into the intensive care unit, a group of medical students trailing behind me. On one of the beds lay a figure so frail and familiar, I stopped in my tracks. It was Ryan. 30 years had passed, and he had withered into someone unrecognizable, thin and hunched, curled up in bed like a shadow of himself. My heart twisted unexpectedly. I crouched silently by the doorway, just watching him. The students noticed my sudden stillness and didn't dare speak. Ryan seemed to sense something. He slowly opened his eyes. Sunlight streamed in from the window. His gaze gradually cleared. The moment he recognized me, he froze, as if unable to believe what he was seeing. After a long silence, his voice cracked. "Natalie, is that you?" The tide of memory crashed down on me. For a moment, the scene overlapped with the past. Dim lights, and aging Ryan lying weak in bed while I sat beside him, tending to him carefully through sleepless nights. The deputy director, seeing his emotional reaction, quickly stepped forward and explained, "Professor Lin, this patient is in a very critical state, multiple organ failure, no family visits, and he's still behind on medical bills." In our past life, Ryan had lost his job after the textile factory closed. On my suggestion, he went into business and succeeded. So how had he ended up like this? Ryan's eyes reddened. He tried to sit up, but his body gave out and he collapsed back onto the bed. "I dreamed just now that you were sitting by my bed," he murmured, his aged face twisted with complicated emotion, comfort and pain. "You'd just been crying. I didn't know how to comfort you. We had 2 kids," he added softly. "They were both by my side. I felt really happy." He looked up at me, eyes brimming with guilt. "Seeing you when I woke up, I thought I was still dreaming." His voice trembled. Eventually it broke down into a hoarse whisper. "Natalie, I'm sorry." Expressionless, I finished reading his medical chart and replied coldly, "I'm afraid you've mistaken me for someone else." I didn't slow my pace or falter during the rounds. As I stepped out of the room, I heard him sob behind me. Natalie, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. The deputy director, annoyed, mumbled beside me. Should we get neurology involved? Maybe early onset dementia? But I felt strangely calm. Living this life again, I understood now. Everything Ryan faced